Chosen ones, what if I told you that everything they did to destroy you is about to make you legendary? Sounds dramatic, right? But history, psychology, and spirituality all point to a strange and powerful truth. Those who are called often suffer first. Ever notice how your life has felt more like a battlefield than a playground? While others around you seem to glide effortlessly through existence, you've had to claw your way through storms, betrayals, and heartbreaks just to stay standing. Take the story of Amara, a girl who radiated something different from childhood. She didn't know it, but that light made people uncomfortable. She was too bright for those living in shadows. Abandoned, used, and manipulated, Amara's life looked like a tragic tale, but over time her agony became alchemy. Her story inspired millions, and the very people who dismissed her later idolized her. Psychologists often talk about post-traumatic growth, a phenomenon where people who endure significant hardship develop stronger character, deeper compassion, and greater purpose than those who never faced adversity. And spiritually speaking, the Bible is filled with figures like Joseph, David, and Esther, people rejected, tested, and mistreated, only to rise into divine positions of influence. The world sees the wound, but heaven sees the warrior. Rumi once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." And he wasn't just being poetic. Pain is the portal through which power is often born. You weren't targeted because you were weak. You were targeted because your potential terrified the darkness. So let this be your awakening. You're not broken. You're being built. And the very things meant to end you will be the evidence of your elevation. In this video, we're peeling back the curtain to reveal the 7 hidden reasons why your pain is actually proof of your purpose. It's time to understand why your path has been so difficult and why it was never meant to destroy you, but to define you. Let's begin. Point 1. Your energy was a threat before you knew it existed. Before you even knew what an aura was, yours was setting off alarms. You weren't even old enough to spell energy, but you were already making people uncomfortable without saying a single word. You could walk into a room and shift the whole atmosphere. Grown adults, people who were supposed to be wiser, suddenly got quiet, gave you strange looks, or even treated you coldly. Why? Because your energy wasn't loud, it was honest. Your very presence whispered, "Truth just entered." And truth has always made liars nervous. Long before you learned about chakras, vibrations, or what it meant to be spiritually awake, you were already carrying the light. That's the thing about chosen ones. You don't audition for it, you are it from birth. And spiritual darkness, oh, it sees you coming from miles away. Darkness doesn't wait for you to grow into your gifts. It starts trying to dim your light the moment you arrive. That's why so many of you experienced bullying, exclusion, or random hostility as children. It wasn't your fault. You didn't act out. You didn't do anything strange. You were simply glowing in a way this shadowy world wasn't ready for. This world has a sickness, a spiritual illness that tries to keep people asleep, silent, and subdued. But your soul didn't come here to fit in. It came to stand out. Your very DNA is encoded with truth, resilience, and spiritual clarity. That's why they called you the weird one. That's why teachers picked on you, why classmates mocked you, and why even family members misunderstood you. But look at you now, still standing, still shining, still you. And here's the real twist. Many of the people who disliked you couldn't even explain why. They had no logical reason. They just felt irritated around you, like your presence was a threat. That, my friend, is spiritual warfare in disguise. That's not personality conflict. That's your divine light unsettling the demons they've made peace with. You weren't attacking them. Your aura just exposed what they were trying to hide. See, spiritual light doesn't need to shout. It doesn't have to prove anything. It simply is. And when that light walks into a room, any darkness has only 2 choices: hide or lash out. You've been on the receiving end of both. But here's what they didn't expect. You wouldn't fold. You wouldn't break. You wouldn't bury your glow just to make others comfortable. You felt the sting, yes. But the light stayed on. What they tried to beat out of you only made you stronger. What they mocked you for became your superpower. And now you know. Now you're aware of what you carry. And they're very aware too. The same ones who ridiculed you are now peeking at your life from the sidelines, wondering how you're still rising, wondering why you glow even brighter after every trial. Some regret it, some won't admit it, but the truth is they remember what they did. And you've forgiven, but you haven't forgotten. You've evolved, not for revenge, but for revelation. Chosen one, don't get bitter, get better. Let them sit in the silence of their own regret while you ascend in peace. Because God doesn't just use your enemies to sharpen you. Sometimes He uses you to teach them, to reflect back what they tried to destroy and show them what resilience really looks like. Keep rising, keep glowing. The light in you was never meant to fit in, it was meant to stand out. And now that you know what you carry, there's no turning back. You are the truth they felt before they understood it. You are the light they tried to dim but couldn't. You were chosen before you even knew the word for it. Point 2. They saw your greatness before you were allowed to feel it. Chosen ones, have you ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift, not because of what you said or did, but simply because of who you are? Before you even understood your gift, your purpose, or your identity, others sensed something different about you, and for some of them, that was enough reason to try to dim your light. Why? Because light exposes. It reveals what's hidden, and your light, it was shining so brightly in the spirit realm, even when you were unaware of it in the physical. People sensed your calling before you ever spoke it out loud. They saw glimpses of your potential through your kindness, your resilience, your mind, and your mere presence. You were walking evidence of what was possible, and to those still lost in their own confusion, that was terrifying. So what did they do? They tried to cut you down before you grew roots. You were mocked, excluded, misunderstood, and even gaslit, not because you were doing something wrong, but because you were doing something right. Gaslighting, a manipulative tactic that causes someone to question their own reality, has been used for centuries to control the narrative. It's psychological warfare. And when you began asking the right questions or showing wisdom beyond your years, people who felt threatened by your light tried to make you doubt yourself. But here's the kicker, you weren't wrong. Your intuition was on point. You were reading rooms, sensing lies, and identifying truth without having to open a book or listen to a lecture. That was your divine discernment at work. And when gaslighting didn't silence you, when your spirit kept pushing past their manipulation, they moved to the next tactic, erasure. They tried to discredit you, ignore your efforts, and write you out of stories you helped build. They wanted you forgotten, buried, erased. But what man erases, God restores. What they tried to block, God cleared a path through. And now, your voice they tried to silence, is echoing in rooms they swore you'd never enter. See, chosen one, you weren't being punished, you were being prepared. Diamonds are made under pressure. Oil only flows when the olive is crushed. And you were forged in adversity, trained in the fire, and polished by rejection. You didn't break, you became unbreakable. What they meant for harm became your curriculum. You learned how to see in the dark because they wouldn't let you sit in the light. You became emotionally intelligent because you had to survive manipulative games. You developed spiritual discernment because your safety depended on it. God used their opposition as your training ground, and now they sit with the weight of regret because they realize you knew the truth all along. You saw through their games, their jealousy, and their schemes, and you stayed silent. That silence, it wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You knew your rise didn't need their approval, it only needed God's timing, so don't get bitter. Bitterness is a distraction. You don't need revenge, applause, or recognition from those who couldn't see your value. Your elevation is the evidence, your peace is the proof. You've already won because you refused to become like them. Let them wrestle with their guilt while you rise into everything they swore you'd never become. The very light they tried to extinguish has become a lighthouse, and now you're not just glowing, you're guiding others home. Point 3, your pain became a portal. Listen up, chosen ones. That trauma, that betrayal, that moment when you cried out and no one answered, that was not the end, it was the beginning. What you thought was the breaking point was actually the turning point. Pain, in its raw and often brutal form, is one of the most misunderstood spiritual tools on earth. It doesn't just show up to ruin your peace, it shows up to rearrange your path. That betrayal you never saw coming, that heartbreak that gutted your soul, that silence from people who were supposed to love you, all of it was part of a greater divine setup, not to destroy you, but to awaken you. Pain doesn't just break us, it transforms us, and transformation is messy. You weren't meant to be polished from the start. Like gold, you had to go through fire to burn away the impurities of illusion, ego, and fear. Scientists have discovered that emotional pain activates the same parts of the brain as physical pain. That's not just metaphor. That's biology confirming what your soul already knew. Your suffering was real, valid, and powerful. But here's the divine twist. Pain is also a portal. It's an initiation into the deeper dimensions of yourself. No seminar, no self-help book, and no motivational speech could have cracked you open the way pain did. It taught you compassion, not the kind you read about, but the kind you feel when someone else is going through what you've survived. It sharpened your discernment. You stopped letting just anyone near your energy. And above all, it forged your resilience like steel in a forge. You learned to rise in silence, to heal in secret, to glow in God's timing, the very breakdowns that you thought would kill you. They were the staircases to your higher self. When your world fell apart, it was never a punishment, it was a divine dismantling. Think of the seed, it must be buried in darkness, pressed by the soil, seemingly forgotten before it can bloom into its true form. Your pain wasn't the grave, it was the groundwork. God wasn't ignoring you, He was preparing you. Trauma, when transmuted, becomes testimony. Betrayal, when healed, becomes a boundary. And silence, when embraced, becomes strategy. You didn't lose yourself, you found your soul. Every time someone left, every time a door slammed in your face, every time you were left out, looked over, or lied about, it was divine redirection. The people who hurt you, instruments, not of cruelty, but of course correction. God doesn't waste pain, He repurposes it. And here you are now, more intuitive, more awake, and more aligned. What once broke you now builds others. You carry a wisdom that can't be taught, only earned. That's why you're a chosen one. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. And now, you glow different, you speak different, you walk different, because you are different. So if you're still healing, still crying, still asking, why me? Hold on, your story is not over. In fact, the most powerful part of your story hasn't even begun yet. That pain was your beginning. That sorrow was your seed, and your breakthrough, it's blooming. Don't curse the pain. Bless it. It brought you here. Chosen one, rise. Point 4, your silence spoke volumes. You didn't clap back. You didn't go on a social media rant. You didn't drag their name through the mud or scheme for petty revenge. Oh, you could have. You had the truth. You had the evidence. You had every reason to fire back with the full force of your pain, but instead you chose silence. And that silence wasn't weakness, it was your loudest roar. Your silence echoed, not just in that moment, but across days, months, years, and even into the spiritual realm. It echoed through timelines, through memories, through the hearts of those who tried to tear you down. And here's the kicker, they expected drama. They expected you to break, explode, and react. But when you didn't, that's when they got scared. That's when their guilt had no distraction, no fight to latch onto, just the deafening stillness of someone who's already won. Psychologists call this non-reactivity, and it's one of the most powerful forms of emotional intelligence. Studies have shown that those who respond to betrayal or conflict with composure rather than retaliation often maintain better long-term mental health and social reputation. You see, when you hold your peace, you're not just avoiding drama, you're rewiring the power dynamic. You shift from being a victim to a silent force of nature. In spirituality, especially among the chosen ones, the earth angels, the light carriers, this isn't just a survival tactic, it's a divine strategy. Your restraint wasn't just noble, it was warfare of the highest order. The universe was watching. Heaven took notes. And while they were laughing, mocking, gaslighting, or plotting, you were evolving. Every moment of silence was a spiritual recalibration, a soul-level ascension. And now the people who hurt you are haunted, but not by what you did. They're haunted by what you didn't do. No angry outbursts, no scandalous clapbacks, no public exposures, just elevation. Grace. Peace. You see, regret thrives in silence. When there's no chaos to point fingers at, no retaliation to justify their actions, they're left with only the mirror. And what do they see? It burns. They thought your silence meant weakness, but it was actually your power under control. That's what makes a chosen one dangerous, not their wrath, but their peace. The fact that you could destroy but choose not to. The fact that you knew what they did, felt what they intended, and still walked away with your crown untarnished. Stillness is the move, as they say. In fact, some of the greatest leaders and warriors in history have known the art of strategic silence. Think of Nelson Mandela, who emerged from decades of imprisonment with not bitterness, but vision. Or Jesus himself, silent before his accusers, allowing truth to speak louder than any words ever could. Angels, don't underestimate what your silence has accomplished. It didn't just protect your peace, it sent a message to the people, to the spirits, to the energy around you. And that message, it's clear, you don't need to prove yourself. Your presence speaks for itself. You are a living testament to the phrase, vindication belongs to God. You let him fight your battles. And he did, in ways you may not even see yet, but trust. They feel it, whether it's through missed blessings, restless nights, or the eerie realization that they lost access to someone irreplaceable. They feel it. So keep walking, angels. Keep glowing, keep moving in silence, because the world is starting to hear what your stillness has been screaming all along. You're not to be played with. You're not to be pitied. You're to be watched in awe. That's the true revenge. Elevation without explanation. And you, dear chosen one, are rising like never before. Point 5. Your isolation was divine separation. They called you antisocial, too quiet, too withdrawn, too intense for comfort. They whispered behind your back, labeling your solitude as weakness, your distance as arrogance, your silence as strange. You didn't fit their mold, and that made them uncomfortable. But here's what they didn't understand. What they saw as isolation was actually God's divine separation. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. God had to pull you out from the noise so he could tune your soul to a higher frequency. See, when a surgeon prepares for an operation, they don't invite a crowd into the room. They shut the doors, sterilize the environment, and remove all distractions. Why? Because precision requires isolation. That's exactly what happened to you. God saw something sacred in you, something rare, and he knew he couldn't let it be contaminated by the chaos around you, so he set you apart. And while you may have felt alone, you were never abandoned. You were being consecrated, protected, refined. Let's get this straight. If you had stayed in the company of the toxic people you once called friends, you would have inherited their curses instead of your blessings. Their habits, their mindsets, their fears, those were infections waiting to spread. Spiritual toxicity is real and it's contagious. So instead of letting you breathe in their bitterness, God moved you to a cleaner space. He stripped away the noise so you could hear his voice clearly. While they were out partying, you were praying. While they sought validation from the world, you sought vision from the Spirit. You weren't late to the party, you were early to your purpose. And yes, it hurt. Isolation always does. It forces you to face your own reflection, confront your own wounds, and endure the silence. But it's in that silence that clarity is born. It's in the stillness that God begins to whisper his secrets into your soul. Psychologists have a term for what you experienced: intentional solitude. It's not the same as loneliness, it's a powerful state of being where deep reflection and transformation take place. Even Albert Einstein believed in the power of solitude. He once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." And biblically, think about Moses, David, even Jesus. Every one of them had a season of isolation before stepping into their divine assignment. Your season of separation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It wasn't a time-out. It was a tune-up. God was stripping you of distractions, illusions, and false attachments so you could stand firm in your authenticity. He wasn't trying to hide you. He was preserving you. Because sometimes, to launch something powerful, it has to be pulled back first. Think of an arrow. The more it's pulled back, the further it will soar. Now, the very people who mocked you for being different are watching from the sidelines. And guess what? That silence you sat in, it birthed wisdom. That solitude, it became your sanctuary. That separation, it became your strength. You no longer move for applause, you move with purpose. You no longer chase approval, you walk in anointing. So to the ones who called you weird, distant, antisocial, thank them, because their misunderstanding became the mirror through which you found your true self. And while they continued chasing the temporary, you've tapped into the eternal. God didn't separate you to make you smaller. He separated you so he could stretch you, sharpen you, and sanctify you. And now you're ready. ready to walk into rooms you once thought were out of reach, ready to speak with authority, ready to lead with grace. You're not behind, you're aligned. They may not understand it, but that's okay. You weren't made to be understood. You were made to be set apart. Point 6. Your authenticity exposed their deception, chosen ones. Let's talk about what really happened when you chose to walk in truth. You didn't come to stir drama. You didn't come to point fingers. All you did was stand tall in your authenticity, and yet the entire atmosphere shifted. Why? Because your truth didn't just speak, it echoed. And when truth echoes in a room full of lies, baby, it shakes the foundation. You didn't need to call anyone out directly. Just by being you, you held up a mirror. And let's be honest, some folks hated what they saw. When your light entered the room, it didn't just shine, it exposed. People who built their identities on deception, manipulation, and hidden agendas suddenly felt uncomfortable, threatened, and even angry. Not because you attacked them, but because your integrity revealed their lack of it. Your presence made it impossible to hide behind the mask they had carefully curated. That's why you became the scapegoat. That's why you were labeled too intense, too sensitive, and too much. But let's break it down psychologically. This wasn't about you. This was textbook projection. According to Carl Jung, people will project onto others the very traits they refuse to acknowledge within themselves. When they couldn't confront their dishonesty, their insecurities, or their envy, they pinned it all on you. Why? Because blaming the honest one is easier than admitting the truth. And yet through all the rejection, you kept your head high. Because deep down, you understood this spiritual principle. Truth doesn't need a spotlight, it becomes the spotlight. You were never trying to win or be popular, you were just being real. In a world that celebrates pretense and punishes authenticity, that alone made you revolutionary. And revolutions always make people uncomfortable, especially those who benefit from the status quo. But here's the twist in your story. Chosen one. The same truth that got you kicked out of the room will one day be the reason they remember your name. Time has a funny way of revealing who was real and who was just loud. People may not admit it publicly, but they remember who told the truth when it wasn't easy. They remember who stood up when it would have been safer to sit down. And when the illusions collapse, as they always do, it's your story they'll revisit. Not out of pity, but out of respect. Your truth is not a liability, it's your legacy. History is filled with people who were mocked for their convictions, only to be celebrated later. Think of Galileo, who was persecuted for speaking scientific truth, or Harriet Tubman, who was hunted for walking in moral truth. At the time, they were labeled dangerous. But now we know them as heroes. Why? Because truth always wins, maybe not immediately, but inevitably. So, chosen one, don't ever regret being honest. Don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable in their lies. If your truth makes someone uncomfortable, that's their inner work to do, not your burden to carry. Let them gossip. Let them twist your words. Let them walk away. Because while they're busy constructing illusions, you're building a legacy. And legacy doesn't fade. In fact, here's the divine truth. Sometimes God will use your rejection as protection. You weren't meant to fit in those false environments. You were meant to rise beyond them. Let those who misjudged you sit with their regret while you rise with wisdom. Let them remember how your authenticity disrupted their performance. And let them watch quietly as the same truth they feared becomes the truth they need. Because one day they'll whisper, they were right all along. And you'll still be walking in truth, but this time you won't be alone. You'll be leading the ones who finally took off their masks, because your courage gave them permission to do the same. Point 7. You were made to be seen, heard, and remembered. Chosen ones. Let's make one thing crystal clear. This world tried to erase your name. They wanted you invisible, unheard, unwanted. But guess what? Heaven wrote your name in bold, in indelible ink, not tucked into the margins. Front and center, every betrayal that broke you, it was actually building you. Every smear campaign that tried to dim your light, it was polishing your shine. Every attempt to shut you up was unknowingly giving more volume to your voice. While they thought they were silencing you, they were amplifying you, writing your legacy in neon, stroke by stroke. And this story of yours, it's not just going to be told, it's going to go viral. Why? because your life is not some fairy tale dipped in sugar. No, it's a raw, unfiltered testimony of survival, grit, and divine resilience. People aren't drawn to perfection, they're drawn to authenticity, and you, chosen one, are as real as it gets. You weren't born to blend in with the noise, you were born to break through the static. You carry the frequency of truth, and that scares the hell out of those who operate in lies. That's why they attacked you. That's why they tried to isolate you, alienate you, and destroy your spirit. But instead of breaking, you bent, and then you bounced back. They thought you were forgotten, wandering aimlessly, but you were hidden like a diamond deep in the earth, being formed under pressure, not forsaken, fortified. You are the revelation the world didn't see coming, the prophecy dressed in pain, the miracle with scars. Now they're watching, their jaws are dropping. The very people who laughed at your dreams are refreshing your page in disbelief. You don't even have to clap back. God already did that for you. The tables didn't just turn, they spun like a divine tornado. Because heaven is intentional. God even used your enemies, not just to refine you, but to teach them. They're sitting in their regret while you're rising in your purpose. And here's the beauty of it. You never chased fame. You chased truth. You carried flames. You were the torchbearer in a world gasping for light. People will remember your name because your testimony will touch their soul. Your voice, your fire, your scars, they are the map someone else needs to find their own healing. So hold your head high, Earth Angel. The story they tried to bury is about to resurrect in glory. And guess who's the headline? You. Chosen ones understand this deeply. What was done to you wasn't random, it was spiritual warfare. Envy is a powerful force, but it's often camouflaged in betrayal, manipulation, or rejection. The pain you endured wasn't just personal, it was generational. Many of those who wronged you were carrying unhealed wounds passed down from ancestors who never faced the light. They saw your radiance and mistook it for a threat, not a blessing. But through it all, you didn't just survive, you transformed. Studies in psychology show that individuals who endure adversity and still develop empathy, vision, and inner strength often possess what's called post-traumatic growth. That's you. You healed quietly, rebuilt with grace, and rose without applause. Now, the world is beginning to hear the frequency of your anointing. You're not crazy, you're chosen, not broken. You're divinely reassembled, and most importantly, not overlooked. You were always part of a sacred prophecy. The same people who dismissed your worth will soon witness your rise. Because the pain you went through didn't destroy you, it refined you. Your story has power, purpose, and divine timing. So walk boldly, knowing that your scars are not stains, but signatures of survival. Your testimony is the key that will unlock someone else's prison. Keep walking, keep shining, and always remember, your story is holy and the world is finally listening.